Okay, we are here again with another tier ranking video. I put it on a cardigan. I think this is what the kids call them. Let's tier rank these bad boys. All right. Same tiers. New part of my personality, new favorite, glad I read it, ambivalent, indifferent, didn't work for me, abomination, nonfiction, and reread. Nonfiction and rereads will not be ranked within the tiers. They will just be done in chronological order of when I read them. Otherwise, not only will each book be tier ranked within a particular tier, but I will be ranking them within said tiers, which negates the whole point of a tier ranking. But whatever, it's my channel, my rules. This is for the second half of 2025. So the first book that I finished in July was Agustina Bastarrica's latest work that's been translated into English, and that is The Unworthy. It is great. It is basically a cult novel, also post-apocalyptic, also nunnery stuff. I actually like it more than Tender is the Flesh, which is maybe controversial. My husband and I buddy read it. He didn't like it as much as Tender is the Flesh. He thought it was, in his words, fine. I loved it. Subsequently, I don't think it's quite enough as part of my new personality, but it's definitely a new favorite. I love Agustina Bastarrica. I will read anything and everything she writes. All right, and then the next thing I read was The Convenient Marriage by Georgette Hare. I read this as a buddy read with Dre from Jimmy's Discord. Didn't work out so well, unfortunately. I really did not like this book. I've been told that it is one of her weakest, if not her weakest book. So I have promised that I will try another Georgette Hare. But The Convenient Marriage is just... Apparently Georgette Hare started Regency romances as like a historical subgenre thing. And I didn't like it. I didn't like any part of it. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the writing. I just thought it was meh. Sadly, unfortunately, I'm going to say it's an abomination. It was pretty bad. And then I read Blindsight, which is the first book in the Fireside Discord quarterly book club. And it was also a dookie read, in my opinion. I will leave a link down below of the live chat that we did. Honestly, to be brutally honest, as soon as I finished this book, everything about it left my brain. I could not tell you a single thing about this book, to be brutally honest. It's not good in my opinion, and I would say it's even worse than Georgette Hare. Thankfully, I then went on to read George R.R. Martin's A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, based on Jimmy's recommendation from Chatting with Nuts, and I adored it. I have seen the Game of Thrones show, the entire series. I only vaguely remember reading the first book in A Song of Ice and Fire. Spoiler alert, it turns out I only read like the first couple of chapters and I never finished it. But mind you, this was like when the show first came out. So I guess you could say I've never read any A Song of Ice and Fire type work. You could say that. Until I read A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And the chivalric romance of it all, I made a dedicated review that was just me rambling about it. I will leave a link to that video down below. This is, spoiler alert, my favorite book of the year. Nothing will top it. This will stay at the top of a new part of my personality, and nothing will go before it for the second half of the year. Then I read Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is a standalone science fiction novel by, obviously, Tchaikovsky, and it is about a group of people that crash land onto this planet called Shroud, and they were orbiting this planet to do research and potentially mine this planet for resources. They wind up crash landing on said planet and experiencing the life forms there. It is, for me, an incredibly terrifying book. I buddy read this with John from various Discords. He was not scared because he's not a scaredy cat like me, apparently. But just the unknown of this and the characters not knowing what's going on was terrifying to me. Once you start to understand, and it's kind of like quasi sociological, quasi ecological, quasi what do you call it, like bioconservation, whatever you call it, like learning about other species. Once they start understanding and experiencing this other life form and understanding how it works, it started becoming less terrifying. But the atmosphere that Adrian Tchaikovsky writes about was just so, oh my gosh, I still think about it. It's so cool. It's definitely a new favorite. Why isn't it going up? There we go. I would actually say it's above the Unworthy for me, because it's just so good. I mean, it's Adrian Tchaikovsky, so, he's cool. All right, and then I read Making History by KJ Parker. This is a novella that I got an electronic advanced reading copy from NetGalley, and I read this. It's a novella. It's KJ Parker. It's pretty standard. It is about a group of people that are going out, and essentially it's kind of, the only way I can describe it, it's kind of like an archaeological thing, but also like I guess again like a archaeological / cultural anthropology type thing, but it's KJ Parker, so there's gonna be like a twist thing. And I actually really enjoyed it. I liked it. I'm gonna say I'm glad I read it. If it goes up, there we go. Okay, then after having read the Rebel Blue Ranch series, I did an entire discussion about the Rebel Blue Ranch with Taylor. I'll leave a link down to that video below. But because of that video, we were looking for other romance authors to try, and Simon from various Discords suggested that we try Ali Hazelwood, which is actually something we were kind of talking about trying, but like which one to try. So Simon suggested that we start with Love on the Brain, which we did, and we really enjoyed it. And it subsequently, as you could probably see, took us on a journey with Ali Hazelwood of literally reading every single one of Ali Hazelwood's works in the second half of the year. Ali Hazelwood, considering I've literally read every single one of her works, love her as an author. I'm going to use the same criteria of only putting one. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'll try and limit the new part of my personality, but we'll see. I will just put it as, it's not quite a new favorite, but it's definitely glad I read it because it was just so fun. Love on the Brain is just so fun. And then I read Heart of the Reproach, which is a short story set in the Tyrant Philosophers series / world by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This takes place in the setting of City of Last Chances, but I mean, I think you could read it on its own. I think you could. You could read it on its own. It's incredibly horrifying. It's incredibly gothic. It is unnerving and terrifying. And there is this figure in there that when I read this figure and this section of City of Last Chances, I was like, I want to know more about this thing. And this thing is in the Heart of the Reproach. That's the focus of the Heart of the Reproach. And it's just so good. It's everything that I wanted and everything that I wanted to explore. And the way Adrian Tchaikovsky, like the story he tells, he is unmatched. I loved it. It's definitely a new favorite. Why is this not loading? There we go. Put it up. It was great. The atmosphere was incredible. so gothic, so dark, so creepy and terrifying and horrifying. It's so good. And then I read Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. This is the, again, 6th book in the City Watch series. I can't remember, but this is the latest City Watch book that I've read, or the last one that I've read. I haven't read Thud or Snuff yet. This was a really difficult book for me to read because of the circumstances of when I read it. It was just hitting too close to home. There's also like the timey-wiminess of it that really unmoored me. But by the end, I really, really appreciated it. Reg Shu is awesome, an awesome character. And then the more time that I've been away from it, the more that I've appreciated it and seen its value. With that said, I will put it in at the top of Glad I Read It, but it's really good. I mean, it's Terry Pratchett. It's arguably his best Discworld book because, for God's sakes, they've made like a vintage classic or Penguin classic about it. Not my favorite Discworld book. Not even my favorite City Watch book. Fifth Elephant is still my favorite, and Men at Arms. But yeah, still great. And then I continued with Allie Hazelwood. I read Not in Love. This is a erotic romance, and I never would have thought that I would become utterly obsessed with an erotic romance. It is a part of my personality. It is my favorite Allie Hazelwood book, and I love it so much. It is great. I love it. All right, and then I read a nonfiction. This is The Secret History by Procopius. This is a depiction of the Emperor Justinian and his wife. I can't remember her name. Theodora? No. I can't remember. But Justinian and his wife. It's basically the ye olde tell-all. It's now been proven to not be incredibly reliable. But this is the behind closed doors depiction of Justinian and his wife and others in the Byzantine area. So yeah, it was a great nonfiction. I really liked it. Yeah. Continued with Allie Hazelwood, Read Love Theoretically. I really didn't like this one. I feel like Allie Hazelwood was trying to do just a lot in that book. Each element by itself could have been great, but she was just doing too much. And I know, I'm sorry, Taylor, I know this is like one of your favorites, if not your favorite, Allie Hazelwood, but it just didn't work for me. I just didn't like it. Sorry. All right, and then Bride by Allie Hazelwood. This is her first paranormal romance book, and I really, 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 really liked it. It's if you watched Underworld in the early 2000s and you were obsessed with the vampire werewolf dynamic of Selena and what's his face, Scott Speedman, the actor guy, you would love Bride. It's just, I mean, it's a romance novel, but it gave me the same, it scratched the same itch as Underworld did with its whole like vampire werewolf dynamic. And it has a mystery to it, which I was actually really compelled by. So yeah, there we go. So it's definitely a new favorite. And then I read Circe. This is for the TBR swap thing that I did with Pete and Anita and Charmaine, and I will leave a link to that video down below. Spoiler alert, I didn't really like Circe. I just couldn't connect with the character. The writing itself was good. I just couldn't connect with anything about it other than, hey, I recognize the writing's nice. But that was it. and it's a Greek retelling. I'm not sure if I'm going to read, what do you call it? Son of Achilles, but here we are. Just didn't work for me. Back to Ellie Hazelwood, read the 3 novellas in Loath to Love You as a collection of 3 novellas. It was just fine. It just, romance doesn't work under a certain page count, I feel like. The last novella in this, in that collection, I think it was called Below Zero, was the one that actually worked the best for me. But the other ones were just, it felt too cramped, too crunched, and I didn't feel any connections with either leads individually, nor did I believe them as a couple, and it just felt too rushed. But the Below Zero novella was really great. So I will put it in ambivalent indifferent. Again, if this loads. There we go. All right. Then I read another novella. This is Lives of Bitter Rain by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I read this as a buddy read with Alan from the Library of Alexandria. And this is a prequel novella to Days of Shattered Faith, which is the 3rd book in the Tyrant Philosopher series. And this tells the story of one of the main characters of Days of Shattered Faith. It follows Gil throughout her life, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. You'll read the author's note at the end where he basically was writing these scenes to get contextualization of Gil before he started writing Days of Shattered Faith, because he wanted to understand her motivations and her character up to the point of the start of Days of Shattered Faith. And I guess for whatever reason or whatever, it was decided to publish this. And I thought it really, really worked. It doesn't feel like a writing exercise at all. It feels incredibly purposeful and meaningful, and it gives a lot of additional context and depth to Gil's character and to her choices within Days of Shattered Faith. And I loved the author's note that basically if you read Lives of Bitter Rain before you read Days of Shattered Faith, hopefully you will understand where she's coming from. And then if you read, as I did, you read Lives of Bitter Rain after Days of Shattered Faith, you understand her character and understand her motivations and see where those motivations came from. So it was great. I loved it. It's one of my favorite things that I've read this year. I will put it up. I'll actually put it above Shroud because I really liked it. I really loved Days of Shattered Faith. Okay, then I reread Mansfield Park. This was another buddy read. I read it with Dre from Jimmy's Discord. He had never read Jane Austen before, or maybe he had, I can't remember. But either way, he hadn't read Mansfield Park before, and we read it, and it was great. And I love Mansfield Park. It's great. It's Jane Austen. What else can I say? Then I reread Beach Read. This time I buddy read it with John, who I buddy read a funny story with. This time, though, I actually read the UK version of Beach Read because there is a difference in the ending. And let me tell you, if you've not read Beach Read, please, for the love of God, read the UK ending one because it's so much superior to the US version. If I had read the UK Beach Read version when I originally read Beach Read, I would have been on the Emily Henry train at least 2 years before I got on. So it's obviously a reread, so it's going to go in the reread section. All right, then the Slew of Allie Hazelwood, Deep End. Very surprised by this one. It's another borderline erotic, deals with BDSM. It's a sports romance and a college romance. All of them shouldn't be on my bingo card of me enjoying, but here I am. I really, really enjoyed Deep End. I didn't like it as much as Bride, but I really, really loved it. Then I read The Love Hypothesis, which is Allie Hazelwood's first published novel. It started off as a fan fiction. And when I say that it reads like a bad fan fiction, I truly mean that it reads like bad fan fiction. because fan fiction, in case you didn't know, can actually be really good. For the most part, it can be even great. Love Hypothesis, even with its edits, is terrible. It's awful. It's the worst. It's the worst. It's the worst. It's the worst book I've read in a very long time. Again, I will leave a link down below to the chat that I had with Taylor about all the Allie Hazelwood books that we read, and we agreed that it was terrible. It was, the Love Hypothesis is an abomination. Then we read Check and Mate, which is Allie Hazelwood's young adult romance novel. It deals with chess, and it's young adult. It's just, I wasn't the target audience, unfortunately. So I just wasn't the target audience, unfortunately. I did like it slightly more than Love Theoretically because I had to forcefully suspend my disbelief a little bit because of the young adult age range that it was marketed toward and written for. Because obviously, again, I'm not the target audience. I'm not a young adult anymore. In case you couldn't tell, I'm not a young adult. Yeah, I'm not the target audience, so it didn't work for me. But I can see why younger readers would enjoy that. And I think younger readers should enjoy that. All right, and then we read Problematic Summer Romance. This is actually technically a sequel to Not in Love. You could read it on its own, but I think you'd get a lot more out of it if you read Not in Love first. It is an age gap romance. But Allie Hazelwood handles it very, very well. And I loved it. If I can get this up here. I will put it right there. Yeah, I'll put it right there. Yeah, right between Shroud and The Unworthy for under a new favorite. Okay, then I read a novella, and by any of the Allie Hazelwoods that I read with Taylor, just to be clear. So we read Cruel Winter with You. It is a short story, one of those Amazon original things. It did, oh God, I hated it. It was fine in the writing, but it was just no connection whatsoever. Like, at least the novellas had a little bit of character motivation, at least that last one of Below Zero. But Cruel Winter with You was just not it. Yeah, I'd put it didn't work for me because I don't think it was an abomination quite. I don't think it was so bad to be an abomination, but yeah, it just didn't work for me. But on the flip side, a novella / a audio book, audio only read that I did from Allie Hazelwood that really worked for me is Two Can Play. So this is going to actually be coming out as a physical release soon, but at the time it was audio only, audiobook only. And it is a story about two video game developers who have to go on a retreat, and it's like a rivals / enemies to lovers type setup, and it really worked for me. The length was like, it was perfectly paced for the length of the story, and the audio itself really, really worked for me. As someone who doesn't normally just do audio, I was so pleasantly surprised by how much I loved Two Can Play. It was great. I am definitely going to put it up on Glad I Read It. Yeah, I'd put it like, would I put it under? Yeah, it's like borderline new favorite because it was really, really good. All right, and then I read, I got into romantasy for the first time. I read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This was so surprising to me that I loved it. It was like reading a CW teen drama, but in a fantasy world with like card magic. And it was just, I really loved it. The atmosphere was great. The characters were delightfully melodramatic. but not annoyingly so, which was great. So I'm actually gonna, surprisingly enough, I'm gonna put it at the end of new favorite, which is a little ironic considering I read Two Twisted Crowns right after that, and it just did not work for me. She does this. Rachel Gillig switched the perspective and added a new perspective in there, a couple new perspectives, and it didn't work for me really at all. But with that said, it's not like at the end of didn't work for me, so at least there's that. The atmosphere was still there. Then I read The Redemption of Morgan Bright by Chris Panettiere. I read this because there was a horror festival that was going on. It was a Spooktastic Book Fair in one of the towns near where I live. And Chris Panettiere was going to be there, and I wanted to make sure that I read one of his books because Chris Panettiere, in case you didn't know, is also an artist. He is the glorious human being that did the interior, the end paper map for The Spear Cuts Through Water. So if you liked the map in The Spear Cuts Through Water, that is thanks to Chris Panettiere. It is wonderful. I got the maps. I printed it out and I got it signed by him. It was wonderful. So anyways, I wanted to make sure that I read at least a book by him before I went to go get the map signed and go meet him. And I'm so thankful that I really, really enjoyed The Redemption of Morgan Bright. I wound up immersion reading this book, and it's a mystery, and it's psychological horror, thriller-esque, and it's just really good. It's also got like multimedia. It's a multimedia type novel with newspaper clippings and stuff like that. And it's really, really good. It's about a woman who but she goes into a asylum to try and find a woman who has been trapped there. And I really, really love it. Definitely in the glad I read it tier, if this can go up. I would put it... Yeah, I would put it right. I would put it between Night Watch and Love on the Brain. Right? Okay, and then despite my disappointment in Two Twisted Crowns, I decided I was going to read The Night and the Moth, which is Rachel Gillig's. I think it came out in 2025, or it came out in 2024. I can't remember. Either way, I read The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Long story short, I could see the writing on the wall that probably the second book in this duology is going to go the same way as Two Twisted Crowns, because everything that I was frustrated about in Two Twisted Crowns continued in Night of the Moth, regarding like the writing and just the melodrama and just it's things that didn't quite add up. With that said, I will still read the second book because I don't know what it is about Rachel Gillig's writing. It's just so addictive. Even though at the same time, I have frustrations with it. So I will actually put this in the ambivalent, indifferent section because I'm on the ambivalent side because I'm conflicted. I love the atmosphere. I love the concept of the world building of this world. I really loved the characters themselves initially, but then as it goes on, it kind of loses its footing as I was reading. But I will still read the second book when it comes out. All right. Then, all that romance aside, I decided to get really angry, and I read Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza by Peter Bernard. This is a nonfiction book about, obviously, the genocide in Gaza and about being Jewish and how one cannot justify the actions that are being done in Gaza by governments and nations that are supporting a genocide. It is a absolutely, utterly enraging nonfiction book to read, but I think absolutely and utterly necessary. It truly radicalized me. I mean, it might have taken me almost 40 years to be radicalized, but here I am. Better late than never, I suppose. But everyone should definitely read Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza. And then I finally finished American Indians, Myths and Legends. This is a collection of, obviously, myths and legends from various Native American tribes. I buddy read this with Urza, who I've been buddy reading the folk and fairy tales with for past couple of years now, past year or so. And I really, really enjoyed it. Very glad I read it. Reading this actually after reading The Buffalo Hunter and Never Whistle at Night, seeing the myths and legends and folklore and the mythology and belief and cultural belief systems from where a lot of the writers were drawing their stories from was really, really, really cool. And I really enjoyed it. Very glad I read it. If this will go up. Glad I read it. I will definitely put it... Yeah, I'll put it right there, right after Night Watch. Right? Then I read another Amazon original, Allie Hazelwood story, Hot for Slayer. It's too short. I think this one definitely, I could see the bare bones of it. It should have been way fleshed out. It should have been a novel. It should have been like another paranormal romance. And it should have been, like, the world was fascinating. It could have been awesome. It could have been awesome. But it just wasn't, because it was way too short. And I just didn't, I actually think it was an abomination. Because it didn't work. It didn't work. I think it's because it had so much potential that it was just like, it just screwed the pooch on it. Yeah. All right. There we go. All right. And then I read a cozy romance, A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This, for the first probably 75% of it, I was absolutely adoring. It was so sweet. It was so cute. I loved the found family aspect of it. The characters were so compelling. The slow burn romance was great. And then about 75% of the way in, Sangu Mandana, there's this distinct shift and switch from cozy family, like slow burn romance to like hot and heavy, really unnecessary sex scene, to be honest. And it really kind of, I'm gonna say, it almost ruined it for me. Like, I wanted what was in that first 75%. I wanted the coziness. I wanted the yearning of the two main characters. And I think it could have, the slow burn, the end could have been the end, like the of them getting together. But I think the juxtaposition of the coziness and then the smuttiness just didn't work for me. But I loved the writing itself. Like, her writing, it was really good. So I want to read the second book in the series and see how it works for me. So I will actually put this in the ambivalent category, because it's also one that I'm very conflicted about, and I actually am putting it above Night and the Moth because I loved so much of this until I didn't, unfortunately. All right, and then I read a short story collection called Fresh Dirt from the Grave by Giovanna Rivero. Yes. And I buddy read this with Angela from Literature Science Alliance, and I had a great time. I love stories. This is a collection of 6 stories, so it's very, very short. And it's Latin American Gothic. I think the author's from Bolivia, so it's actually Bolivian Gothic, if that's a thing. It's horror, light horror, but also fantastical. It's really, really good. It's definitely glad I read it at the very top there. Actually, yeah, I'll put you there. And then I read Lila Sage's latest work, which is Soul Searching. I read this basically the day it came out. I read it, Buddy read it with Taylor, and I really enjoyed it. I loved everything about this book except for, oddly enough, the sex scenes. They just didn't work for me for whatever reason. They weren't like badly written. It's just the content of the sex scenes didn't work for me. If you know, you know. But what I really connected with was the main character, the main female lead. Like her, she was a wildlife photographer, and in case you didn't know, one of my childhood dreams, and probably delusional dreams even now as an adult, is to be a National Geographic photographer. I connected immediately and so deeply with our lead for that reason alone. It is quasi-paranormal in that our female lead can see ghosts, and it's actually really fun. But it's pure. It is definitely a romance book. So I am going to say, where would I put this? I'm going to say that Soul Searching. I'm actually going to put it above at the top of Glad I Read It. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Then I read Ali Hazelwood's latest work. Well, latest work at the time, which is Mate, and it is the sequel to Bride. Without going into spoilers, it follows a character that is in Bride, that is introduced in Bride. And it's fated mates is the trope. Never thought I would like fated mates, but here we are. And it's about werewolves, which is great. And I'm gonna decide now that I'm gonna break my own rule, I guess, and put, well, it's not technically still it's not in the same series, so it's a new part of my personality. I loved Mate. I loved it. I loved Bride, so I was blown away about how much I loved Mate. I still think Not in Love is my favorite, but Mate is a very, very close second. And then I read Hamlet by William Shakespeare. Technically, I guess you could call this a reread because I remember reading it in high school like most U.S. educated people do in high school. And I read this because I wanted to... My plan was to watch Hamnet, the film, but I needed to read Hamnet. But in order for me to read Hamnet, I wanted to reacquaint myself with Hamlet so that I could see any parallels in the text. So I read Hamlet. It was great. I mean, there's a reason why William Shakespeare is considered the bard, as it were. And I loved it. So just because I guess it's technically a reread, I'll put it in the reread section. Then I read Savage Blooms by S.T. Gibson. It just didn't work for me. This was supposed to be a buddy read with Amanda from Shelf Unstable. I'm sorry, Amanda. I'm still sorry. It was... I had to get through it, so I did the audiobook because I was suffering. I was torturing myself. It's not badly written. It's actually very well written. I just didn't connect with it at all. It was all vibes, all atmosphere, no real plot. And I wasn't compelled by the characters in any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to put it at the end of didn't work for me, because I wouldn't say that it's an abomination. I can see why people like it. I mean, to be fair, I can also see why other people like the books that are in the abomination tier. But it had some redeeming qualities. Savage Blooms did. Okay. Then I read The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. This was another pick for the Fireside Discord, our quarterly book club. And it's Le Guin. I loved it. It's about a man who has lucid dreams, or was it effective dreams? So literally he dreams and he changes reality. That is the whole premise of the book. And I adored it. I thought it was great. It's a great book to like look at in conversation with things like Ted Chiang's Story of Your Life. And I've been told that both of those were probably inspired by Philip K. Dick's The Three Stigmatas of Palmer something. So I really want to read that book to like see how they were inspired by that book. But Lathe of Heaven, it's Le Guin. It's great. So I will put it up. Yeah, I'll put it right there. All right. Then my long overdue reread of the Winter Night trilogy. I started with The Bear and the Nightingale. This was supposed to be a buddy read with Kim and Tanner. I think Tanner finished it. I think he did. I think. Tanner, let me know if you finished it. But obviously I finished it. It was great. I love Bear and the Nightingale. Winter Night trilogy is one of my favorite Actually, it is my favorite fantasy series of all time. I love it so much. It's great. Okay. All right. And then I read the Aeneid, and this is by Virgil. I read the latest translation that just recently came out, translated by Scott McGill and Susanna Wright. I really enjoyed this. Of the three, of the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid, the Iliad is still my favorite of the three. But I really liked the Aeneid. And but yeah, it was great. It's a classic for a reason. I mean, ancient. It's been around. It's obviously been around for a reason and been copied over the thousands of years for a reason. So I would say it is a new favorite. And actually, sorry, Virgil, you're going behind Allie Hazelwood. Then I read the first book in the Scavengers trilogy for Alan's annual October, November, December read along of the KJ Parker trilogy, and this is Shadow. It is such a confusing book. Pattern, as the second book you will see, is also very confusing. And spoiler alert, Memory, which is the last book, is also very confusing, which I finished in this month in January. With that said, while I will not recommend the Scavengers trilogy to any first-time KJ Parker readers, I actually wound up really enjoying the trilogy as a whole. I'll leave a link down below to the chat that Alan, Pete, Anitha, and I did regarding both Shadow and Pattern separately, separate videos. But surprisingly enough, actually, gut reaction, I think I'm going to put it as new favorite. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Shocker of the year, everyone. All right, and then I read Daddy Issues by Kate Goldbeck. I was so excited about this book. I'd never read any Kate Goldbeck before. I was solely excited about this because the title, Daddy Issues. It's a single dad and a girl who comes across his path. And I hoped to love this. I wanted to love it. I buddy read this with Taylor and with Dre. And at least I can say it was a successful buddy read in that all three of us really hated this book. As someone who has daddy issues, this just ain't it. And I hated it. I hated it so much. Did I hate it more than Blindside? Um, hmm, hmm. Yeah, actually, I hated it more than Blind Sight. Love Hypothesis is still the worst thing I've read this year, though. Okay, then I read another Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is Pretenders to the Throne of God, which I read as an e-arc from NetGalley. My buddy read this again with Alan from the Library of Alexandria, and I thought this was great. This is a book. This is the fourth book in the Tyrant Philosopher series, and this is the point at which, and the book at which I think is absolutely necessary to read all the other books in the series first. At least the novels. You don't necessarily have to read Lives of Bitter Rain. But you definitely need to read City of Last Chances, House of Open Wounds, and Days of Shattered Faith before you read Pretenders to the Throne of God. On its own, it's still a great... It has an arc on its own, but it is heavily dependent upon the contextualization in those first three books. And it's simultaneously, even though it has its own satisfying arc within the novel, and it is dependent upon the previous books to understand the context, it's also heavily setting up what I imagine is going to happen in the last book. So it is definitely a setup book, while also being a contained narrative on its own. It is... I don't know how Tchaikovsky does that. He does all of these things simultaneously at the same time. With that said, Pretenders to the Throne of God is definitely a new favorite. If I can get it up there. Did I like it more than Heart of the Reproach? Did I? Where do I put it? Yeah, I think that's right. I think right there, that works. Okay. All right. And then I read Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, because I had read Hamlet. I wanted to watch the film adaptation of Hamnet. Read Hamnet. And this is the story about... it is about Hamnet, but it is about... Spoiler alert, because historically we know that William Shakespeare and his wife, Anne Hathaway, had a son named Hamnet. And we know that Hamnet died in his childhood. This novel really follows... While it is about Hamnet, it's actually about Hamnet's death and the grief. The first half is the lead up to Hamnet's death, and then the second half is the after effects and the aftershock that the grief of his death evokes. It is so incredibly emotional. I utterly sobbed multiple times in this book. The writing is stunningly beautiful, and it's just stunning. It's absolutely stunning. It's definitely a part of my personality. I would say, yeah, it's definitely part of my personality. Right there. All right. And then Lazarus by Leonid Andreev. I read this kind of as a quasi-buddy read with Jimmy from Chatting with Nuts. It's a short story. It's like 40 pages, if that. So he technically dusted me on it, I guess if you could say. But we read it literally within like an hour. And it is about Lazarus from the Christian Bible, Christian New Testament. And it's about him coming back to life and what he experiences, or rather, I should say, how everyone else experiences interacting with Lazarus after he comes back to life. It's incredibly horrifying, incredibly unnerving, incredibly terrifying. And the way Leonid Andreev writes the story, it's not explicit in regards to... I think it's not explicit in regards to what people see when they see Lazarus, of what Lazarus saw when he died. Again, it's incredibly short, so I don't want to like, it's just something I think you need to experience. You can find it online on Gutenberg, probably for free, because it's in the public domain. So I would definitely recommend it. I really want to read everything else that Leonid Andreev wrote. I think he just wrote short stories. So I'm very excited to read other works by Andreev. So I will actually put it as part of my personality. Here we are. All right, and then I decided I was going to get into Summer I Turned Pretty series to finally gauge whether Taylor and Yolanda are right, because they became obsessed with the show and series. And it's a young adult trilogy romance about a girl who has a love triangle with two brothers, who are her childhood, like they go on family vacations to this beach house and this beach every year. And as a young adult novel, and as you imagine being in a love triangle with two brothers, it's very messy, as Yolanda says. But Jenny Han just captures girlhood and young adulthood and young women so well. And I loved it. I became obsessed with it. I am very, very glad I read it. Almost to the point of new favorite. Then I read Pattern. This is the second book in the Scavengers trilogy by K.J. Parker. And the confusion that I had in Shadow continues in Pattern, even more so. And apparently I really like to be confused, at least when it comes to Parker. I was into it. And surprisingly enough, I'm going to put it in a new part of my personality. I loved it. It was great. What can I say? I'm sorry. I can't help it. Right, and then I read this, the second book in the Summer I Turned Pretty series, It's Not Summer Without You, and it was great. I really liked it. Again, continues capturing young womanhood really well. The voice of our main character, Belly, which is a weird nickname, but I really liked it. I will put it into, we'll put it here. There you go. Right, and then I reread The Girl in the Tower, which is the second book in the Winter Night trilogy. And yeah, what can I say? It's great. Again, it's my favorite fantasy series of all time for a reason. Then I finished out the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy with We'll Always Have Summer. This is the one that kind of broke the trilogy for me. I think genuinely, if this trilogy had ended stronger, this would have become maybe a new part of my personality, maybe a new favorite. However, unfortunately, this third book it's the stereotype of young adult books that everyone thinks young adult books are. Incredibly melodramatic, infuriatingly melodramatic, infuriatingly immature characters, infuriatingly stupid plot and character decisions. There's a definite character assassination that happened in this book. That is basically the whole plot point of this book. And it just didn't make sense to me why any of the things were happening, let alone the way that they were. So yeah, it hurts me, but I'm gonna have to put it in an abomination. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Taylor and Yolanda. I'm so sorry. On the flip side, I finally finished Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I had started this in August and finally finished it. I was very slowly reading it while I was reading other things. And surprise, surprise, it's actually pretty good, you know. Who knew, right? I love Sansa. Sansa is great, and I will take no questions and no critiques of her character. Daenerys is also a great character, so suck it to anyone that doesn't like Daenerys or Sansa. Yeah, I'll put it at the top of new favorite. There you go. All right, and then I read Hogfather, which is, I can't remember what number book in the Death series it is. And I read Hogfather because multiple people were reading Hogfather because of the holiday season. And I don't know, maybe I'm a Scrooge, but I just didn't like it. I loved Susan as a character. I loved Death as a character. But the overall plot just didn't, I wasn't invested in any way, shape, or form. So it just did not work for me. Yeah, I'll put it at the didn't work for me there. Then I read Norwegian Folktales with Urza, who is a real and true Norwegian. So actually reading these and getting the cultural context of these tales from Urza as we were reading was really, really fun. Lots of trolls, lots of smelling of Christian blood, and it was really, really great. Very glad I read it. I will put it, did I like it more than American Indians? I put it to like, I like them, I like the folktales like pretty equally. So I'll just put them right beside each other. Okay. And then I listened to Bound, which is another currently audio only work by Ali Hazelwood. And this is another one that actually really worked for me. It is a paranormal romance, but also like dark academia and mystery heist thriller thing. It's how she's able to combine all of those things and do them so well in such a short span with this work shows me that she can do that. Like, she can do that, unlike like Cruel Winter with You and Hot for Slayer. Like, it works. She can do that. She has the skills and the craftsmanship. So it really, really worked. So did I like it more than Two Can Play? That is the question. I would say that I like them equally. I'm gonna put it like, I like them pretty equally, so I'll put them like that. All right. Then I read Planetfall, so spoiler alert. I'm not supposed to tell anyone my rating, but who cares? It's fine. This is another one that I read for the TBR swap with Pete and Anitha and Charmaine, and this was Pete's pick. Cersei was Anitha's pick. And while technically I'm not really supposed to tell anyone about my rating, who really cares? Let's be honest. There's this whole thing on Jimmy's Discord of Team Palmer for the Terra Ignota series versus Team Newman for the Planetfall series. Considering the fact that I actually finished Planetfall and didn't DNF it, unlike what I did with Two Like the Lightning, I would say that I'm decidedly Team Newman. In regards to Planetfall itself, it's really well written. Too well written, I'll be honest, because the character who we are following, and we are in a first-person perspective with this character, hit incredibly close to home in a very uncomfortable way, not in a cathartic way in any way, shape, or form. So I'm really conflicted. So on one hand, this could be a 4-star read for me. using certain criteria and certain feelings. And on the other hand, at the same time, it could be simultaneously a 2-star read for me because of the same criteria. So I'm incredibly conflicted. With that said, I don't think I'd put it in the ambivalent indifferent category. I would actually put it in the glad I read it tier, if I can get this up there. I will put it, I'll put it right there. All right. And then I read The Devil You Know by K.J. Parker. This is another, obviously, K.J. Parker work. It's a novella. And I was reading this because I needed a break from Memory, which is the last book in the Scavengers trilogy. And I had this delusion that I was going to try and read 100 books by the end of the year. And at that point, I was at 97. So I was like, oh, sweet. I'll read 90. I'll read 100 books. I'll read 3 books. So this was my 98th book. And I thought it was good. It was great. Devil You Know. It's about a deal with a devil. And standard K.J. Parker. Question is did I like it more than Making History? I think I like Making History just a tad bit more. But I'm glad I read it. All right. And then the last book that I read in 2025, the 99th book / story / work, whatever, that I read / listened to was Mary Ventura and the Ninth Kingdom, which is a short story by Sylvia Plath. She wrote this and submitted it for publication while she was in college, in the 1950s. And it wasn't published until obviously long after her death. The magazine that she published or she submitted this to rejected it, so it was never published. Was rejected, and then she rewrote it to make it less, to make it more palatable, and then she resubmitted it. And I think it was published by a magazine like many years later. But what I read, the Mary Ventura and the Ninth Kingdom edition that I read was the original manuscript edition that she submitted to the original magazine, and it's literally 30 pages. It's really, really good. It's so incredibly interpretative. It's fable-like and an allegory, and also semi-autobiographical, if you know about Sylvia Plath's life. Incredibly up to interpretation, and I think it's ripe for conversation and discussion. So I will say that it is I'm gonna say it's a new favorite. I would put it up here. Can I do a different view? No, because I want to look at all these. Zoom out. There we go. Okay, that's all of them. Sweet. So that is my tier ranking for the second half of the year. Please do not compare this to my Instagram post of my top 9 books of the year, nor to my maybe top books of the year video that I may or may not do in the future. So yeah, that's it. That was the second half of the year for me. Let me know what your favorite book of the second half of the year of 2025 was. And what your favorite book of the year wound up being. Was it your favorite book of the second half of the year? Was it still your favorite book of the first half of the year? How did it all pan out for you? So that's it.